Hey everybody, it's Justin from the Camera Shop in Muskegon, and I'm here with a Facebook Live here on Monday with Tamron's very own Steve Ostrander. Steve, thank you for joining us today. I'm
Glad to be
kind
here.
of I feel a little bad because I'm dropping this on you here at the last minute. It's kind of like the surprise interview. We have 5 o'clock. You've got 5:30 Central Time, and man, that doesn't bode well, does it?
No, that's all right. How quick is he on his feet? We'll find out.
Yeah, so we'll see how good Steve is on his feet here, guys. So let's not judge him too critically here. We tried to get a presentation to work. That's why we delayed our going live. So we'll have to forego the presentation. Maybe at some point, Steve, we could try that again at some other point. But
Well,
how long have you been in the photo industry?
I started in 1976. I started working in a camera store, much like the store that you work out of.
Okay.
The difference is it was just a one store operation, mom and pop store, and started out as a bookkeeper in a camera store and worked up to manager, and the rest is history.
Rest is history. So, so you started in a camera shop. Does that mean that you shot as a photographer? You took your own photos? Do you still take your own photos?
Yeah, I shot a lot when I was younger. I nature photography is my favorite,
Okay.
and that's why I wanted to get a job in a camera store was because just like so many of us that work in camera stores, it became a passion, and I wanted to have access to everything, and so I worked in the store and been in the industry ever since.
And how did you find your way? For someone like myself, it's kind of a nice curiosity because I'm in the camera business myself, just like you were. How did you find your way into becoming a company rep?
It's a good question. It actually comes up quite often when I'm doing live uh, in-store demos and things like that, because there are a lot of people that would like to become a company rep.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a goal of mine when I started out. Like I said, I worked in a camera store. I became the manager, so I had reps calling on me, and I never even thought about it. I thought that being a store manager was fine, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, but over the years, I made a lot of contacts. I had I moved to Florida. I actually managed a camera store in Florida in a 34 store chain called Allen's Camera, which is no longer in business. But and I made a lot of contacts there. And it just so happens one of the guys that I hired to work for me had that ambition of becoming a company rep or
Mm-hmm.
a sales rep. And I left the company, and he became a manager of a store there. And he worked himself into the industry and made some contacts where he became um, a sales rep for,
Mm-hmm.
an independent sales rep representing different lines. One of the people that he knew hired him as a sales rep. And so since we knew each other, I moved to Illinois. Just so happened he moved to Illinois, and he calls me up one day and he says, "Hey, what do you think about coming to work for me as a sales rep? You could be a sub rep." So I'd be working for him.
Okay.
And so I said, sure, but it was very scary because I'd never worked um, those sales jobs were independent sales reps on a straight commission basis. So I had
Mm-hmm.
never worked on a straight commission, so it was very scary because I had a family and I didn't know if I was going to make $5 or
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had no idea
Yeah.
because
That can be a scary precedent there. Yeah.
yeah, but I made the jump and became an independent, and I did that for a few years. And I got a call one day from one of the companies I represented and said, "We'd like to hire you as a company rep." We do
Nice.
because they like having the concentration just on their line. They don't want
Mm-hmm.
necessarily you to be selling everything. But the nice part about it was one of the lines I represented that even back then was Tamron. It was an independent, as an independent contractor for them, but I also represented lines, bag lines, tripod lines. So I had, no matter where I went, I had something I could sell every store.
Mm-hmm.
But having a filter line was key, because every good lens needs a good filter to go onto it. So,
Agreed.
but that's kind of how that all came together. They saw what I was doing, and they said, "Well, we like him to just concentrate on our line." So I became a company rep. I actually was a company rep for Tiffin
Okay.
For 16 years.
Okay.
And but in the time I've been representing Tamron now for over 20 years. It's been close to 25 years now.
Wow.
As both independent, and 3 years ago I became a company rep, just
Nice.
selling Tamron. So that's all I do now. But I have, as you may find out as we go along here, I have a lot of information up here about Tamron from all the years I've been with them.
Oh, I'm sure, and that kind of leads me to our next questions for our followers out there on Facebook. Is what's kind of the history behind Tamron? How did they kind of get their start in the industry, and kind of what's been their progression? Because everyone's kind of used to the native mounts as far as like the Canon native lenses or Nikon native lenses, and yes, these are native mounts for those systems. But where did Tamron come into this whole picture with producing? Is it right to say third party lens company, or is it, what's the best terminology for that?
Lens manufacturer.
Lens manufacturer. That sounds much better.
Yeah, I mean, when people think third party, they think, well, that means that they're third to one and
Third.
two.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, I don't want to be number three.
You don't.
And so
I don't want to put you in a corner either, Steve.
it's one of those things that, as I said, I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen a lot of lens companies come and go.
Yeah.
So when you look back over the history of all the different companies that I've seen come and go, Tamron has always been consistent.
Okay.
So I have a question for you, Justin.
Sure.
Do you know? Are you familiar with the term T-mount?
The T-mount?
Yeah,
That's for telescopes, right?
it was.
Yeah.
But you realize they also used them in camera lenses?
Tamron lenses had T-mounts. Is that?
Well, I mean, that's kind of the point. Years ago, when lenses were being developed and it started to expand and people wanted longer lenses, telescopes were using T-mounts, like you said. But also there was a company that came along and said, hey, why don't we make longer lenses for cameras? And they developed a T-mount system for cameras. And
Interesting.
what does the T and T-mount stand for?
I'm gonna guess Tamron.
That would be a good guess. So,
I mean, I've never been put in the position of being the one who's being asked the question, Steve. So this is great. I love this dynamic that's happening so far. It's a give and take.
That's right.
Well, and it's an education moment for me too, because as a lot of people don't know, you're our Tamron representative for our store. I think you've been for what, the last 2 or 3 years? Is that correct?
3 years now. Yeah.
Okay. So at least I can recall that much. But you and I have had many conversations. Your territory. I forgot how big your territory is, but you come to Michigan and you go to all the stores. And you've had an opportunity to stop in and talk, and we don't necessarily get to talk about the history of Tamron. I've never asked about the history of Tamron, so it's a good opportunity to kind of educate me and educate everyone out there who's watching.
Yeah, Tamron actually started in 1950, and they're an optics company, and they did a lot of binoculars and a variety of different things in the optics divisions, and they grew from there. Tamron's focus as they moved forward was the technology of optics. And so they continued to develop the optical uh, dynamic of lenses. We've seen a lot of lenses, as I said, there was a lot of, I was working might have 10 different lens lines, which sounds unbelievable these
Yeah.
days because basically you have people like us and Canon, Nikon, the camera manufacturers. Um, those are the ones that people know, but I remember selling a variety of different names. And Tamron was one of the ones that was an original. Tamron is an original equipment manufacturer.
Okay.
What that means is that they build lenses under their own name, but they also build lenses under other people's names. They don't have anything built for them, but they build things for other companies. And these companies are, it's safe to say, and I have non-disclosure agreements that I have to adhere to,
Sure.
but
Yep.
it's very safe to say that they've worked with every major manufacturer in the industry at one time or another over the years.
So in the industry being the camera industry is what we're alluding to, right?
Absolutely,
Okay.
because camera manufacturers also are lens manufacturers,
Mm-hmm.
and there might be a specific type of lens that a camera manufacturer. There's only so much factory, so much that you can do in a factory. There's only so many lenses you can make it on a factory line within a
Mm-hmm.
given period.
Sure.
And so there might be a manufacturer out there that says, we want a specific focal length made to these specifications at this price point. And they come to Tamron and say, okay, build this for us. We want 100,000 of these lenses.
Wow.
And what this has allowed Tamron to do is, and what a lot of people don't realize, is Tamron is actually the largest lens manufacturer in the world.
Wow.
So if you ever want to check out a lot more information about Tamron and the company Tamron, the headquarters of Tamron, it's Tamron in Japan, but it's just Tamron.com is the home website for the worldwide uh, corporate,
En-
website.
en- entity and company. Okay.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of information. Tamron is a publicly traded company on the Japanese stock exchange. So by being a publicly traded company, there's a lot of information that, like I said, I'm under non-disclosure
Sure.
about certain things, but there's a lot of information you can learn there, like who their major stockholders are. Number
Yeah.
one is a worldwide distribution company, which makes a lot of sense because they do distribute lenses worldwide. Number two is actually kind of leads into something else we're going to talk about here in a little bit.
Sure.
The second largest stockholder, do you have any idea of who that might be?
Um, might it be Sony?
That would be a correct statement. So there's a lot of shared technologies and a lot of partnerships that have gone on for many years. But what a lot of people don't know is how does that stuff start? It's
Sure.
like, okay, how does Sony and Tamron ever get together? Well,
Sure.
again, if you look back in a little bit of history about Sony, you might remember that video cameras way back when used to be so big they would fit on your shoulder.
Oh yeah, I was born in that era, so I remember seeing those things. VHS
Exactly.
tapes. Yeah.
And what advanced that technology? Remember who was the first to come out with a handy cam, something you
Was
could
it?
hold in your hand?
Well, Sony was the one that I remember having. I mean,
Yeah,
even to this day, they're the only ones who are still really the big producers of handycam cameras.
exactly. So in
Yeah.
order to do that, in order to get it from that size down to that uh, handheld type of camera, they had
Mm-hmm.
to come up with a new process in order to make the parts that small. So they
Mm-hmm.
really developed the injection molding process that's used today to make parts very small and thin. And so that was a technology that Tamron was very interested in. They wanted to make lenses smaller and lighter weight.
Mm-hmm.
So what does every camcorder have in it?
Um, shoot.
A lot of parts, but
There's
one
a
is
lot of parts.
the the quality of the image comes through what part of the camera.
Well, the glass, right? The lenses.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
every
I
camera
should.
has a lens in it. So it just so happens that Tamron wanted to make lenses smaller, and Sony wanted to have somebody to make lenses.
Yeah.
So there you have a
So,
partnership that started that exists to this day.
wow.
So
And that's back in. I mean, that's a partnership as old as I am. I mean, we're talking cameras were
right,
made in the '80s, and I
that's
was born in
right,
'85. So I mean, it's at least 35 years old. So
exactly. So
interesting.
there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that most people wouldn't even think about or care about. But there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of information up here. Some people might think it's worthless information, but if anybody ever wants to know, and when people are coming to me when I'm doing a lot of demos and stuff, and they say, why Tamron, or who is Tamron, or I've never heard of Tamron, it's some of these things that go back to showing the credibility of the company. Because
Mm-hmm.
Tamron, a lot of people don't realize that Tamron is actually the most awarded lens manufacturer in the world. They won more awards than everybody else combined because they advanced the technology. Canon was the company who actually invented image stabilization. And if you remember on the initial image stabilizations, it was vertical and horizontal axis. And there was a
Mm-hmm.
switch on the lens to turn it from one to the other. Well, Tamron looked at that and they said, well, that's great, but I think we can do it a little bit better. So they came
Hmm.
up with a triangulation system, with a
Wow.
three coil system, to use three separate motors so that no matter what direction you were moving,
Mm-hmm.
it would stabilize. And that
Interesting.
was technology they developed and won awards for, and then were able to license to other manufacturers. So it's those types of things. Leica invented a spherical lens elements. They would take glass and they actually grind it down into different shapes to make light bend differently. So you can
Mm-hmm.
use one element to do three or four different things. Because a spherical element is just, it's going to be round. It's going to,
Mm-hmm.
if you continue the curve, it's going to make a ball. But
Yeah.
spherical lenses or spherical lens elements are something that aren't, they have a certain kind of a wave to them that will bend the light differently. So
Mm-hmm.
Tamron looked at what Leica was doing and said, hey, I think we can do something less expensive because it's very expensive to grind that down that way. So they came up with a hybrid spherical lens element that allowed them to do some molding, mold some glass and some things together in those shapes that would do it a lot more efficiently and a lot less expensively, but again, make the lenses smaller and lighter because now you had a shorter barrel because you didn't have as many elements, and it'd be lighter because there weren't as many elements in it. So it's those types of technologies that continue to advance, and you see new technologies just like as we get into the Sony stuff, new technologies that are developed all the time, and you continue to see more and more awards as time goes by.
So, I mean, is it? I mean, a lot of people in the industry have kind of said that Sony has been one of the, that you really got to follow the trail of innovation. Is it safe to say that with having partners like Sony, and our partnerships with companies like Sony, and kind of the couple examples that you've cited just in the last couple minutes, that Tamron's kind of this. Are they a driving force? Are they an innovative force in the lens industry then?
Absolutely. That's what again, there's different people out there making lenses, but it's a question of how do we make something better. And using the Sony lineup as an example, obviously we know that Sony has some great optics and makes some great lenses, and they
Mm-hmm.
have their G Master lenses and they have their regular lineup. But when Tamron decided to get into the mirrorless thing and do the Sony, they didn't do like somebody else did, where they just took existing products
Mm-hmm.
and made them out for the existing product lineup. What Tamron
Correct.
decided to do was design them from the ground up so that they'd be native lenses for those cameras. So everything was going to be optically correct. Everything they could work on the size and weight, because the point of going mirrorless, a lot of what people wanted to do was make them, the cameras smaller and lighter.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of defeated the purpose if you had this huge lens that, you adapted a mount and made a different mount to make it work on this camera. That's not what Tamron did. That's where you had the innovation to come up with something. Because again, Sony had some great lenses in the lineup, but Tamron looked at it and said, well, how can we come up with something that will fit into the lineup or come in between what they have at a certain price point or a certain weight and appeal to the masses? Because that's
Mm-hmm.
what Tamron tries to do. Tamron, they could build anything they want.
Sure.
I request all the time, hey, how come you don't have a fisheye lens? Well, you look at the demand for a fisheye. It's a cool
Mm-hmm.
lens, but how many times are you going to use it?
Yeah,
So
it's fun, but it's like a one-trick pony.
exactly. So
Yeah.
if you look at the research and development that goes into having to make that lens and the millions of dollars that has to be invested to do R&D, set up manufacturing, do all of that, you've got to sell X number of them for it to pay for itself.
Sure.
So if you look at that and you say, okay, we got to sell, we come up with the number, the break-even point of that lens. You may never reach that, so it's a waste of time for them to do that, because other companies, you can get a Canon one or a Nikon one or whatever. And people always ask, well, why are Tamron lenses less expensive? This is the reason why. Because all that R&D that goes into the 150 different focal lengths that they have has to be spread across every lens.
Mm-hmm.
So, that every lens carries the weight of the other lenses. But Tamron concentrates on maybe 15 to 20 focal lengths at a time. Our catalog is very small. But
Mm-hmm.
when you look at the catalog, the stuff that's in there is the stuff that's in demand. Everybody's got to have a 70 or 200 2.8, because 24-70 and 70 to 200 2.8, they got to have those, because a lot of professional photographers are looking for that. So we have
Mm-hmm.
some, and they're phenomenal. But it's the other specific things. It's, specific, hey, we got to have a macro. We've got to have something really wide, something really long, something, that appeals to everybody, instead of just 10 people out of, 1,000.
Sure. Um, so I mean that kind of leads me to my second question, because I mean ultimately, and you kind of already scraped on it, we really are, we really kind of want to talk about what Tamron's doing with Sony and the E-mount system. But first, I wanted to ask, because Tamron has been making lenses for other camera companies for a long time. As far as they've been making Canon lenses. Um, you've got Nikon. There's been many film lenses prior to that. But what's the argument for someone out there? Like if I walk into a store and you're the rep, or you're there working, what's the argument for Tamron? I mean, outside of this history, why should I pick up a Tamron lens and purchase it for my Canon camera, my Nikon camera, or any camera that I'm shooting with?
It's a good question, and I'm not saying every customer should buy a Tamron lens.
Oh, sure, but it's really like
When they
what's.
come into your store, it's, you've got to be able to find out, what are they shooting.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what do you need? What brought you into the store today? You obviously need something that you don't have. What can I get you that will do something that you can't already do? And that's where we solve the problem. And so you run into these situations where, and I have many, many stories over the years of customers that have done that. If somebody comes in and says, "Hey, look, I'm looking for, I shoot my kids' sports. Okay, I need a lens that does a better job. I have the kit lens, and I need something, even though I have a 70 or 55 to 200 or 55 to 300. Um, I need something that allows me to be able to shoot, because the images I'm getting aren't very good when I shoot my kids' basketball games or volleyball or swimming or something like that. What do you recommend?" Well, obviously, you could turn around. We already know what they need is a 70 to 200 2.8. That's a given. Now it's the question of, are they going to buy the Canon or Nikon one, or are they going to buy the Tamron one?
Mm-hmm.
Well, why should they buy the Tamron one? Well, it comes down to what are they going to be using that lens for? Are they a professional photographer? They make their living with the lens, and they're going to be using it, traveling the world with it, and they
Okay,
need
lost you.
the best of the best. I will put our lenses up against, as far as image quality, I'll put our lenses up against anything that's out there. So if somebody says, hey, I need you determine they need a 70 to 200 2.8, then it's a question of setting the Canon and Nikon one up there and showing them that one and showing them our 70 to 200 and letting them shoot the two and make their own comparison. But they'll see that the Tamron light lens is lighter weight. It has a better warranty. Tamron has the best warranty in the industry. 6 years parts and
Yeah, I was gonna say 6 years. Yep.
yeah, 6 years parts and labor. They have the lowest defective ratio in the industry, but that doesn't mean zero. So let's say there was an issue with the lens and it needed to go to Tamron for a repair. They have a phenomenal repair department. They have a 3-day turnaround guaranteed. 3 business days from the time that they get the lens in, it has to be back out the door. So
Wow.
it's not 3 weeks, it's not 3 months like we've heard from some other companies or people complain about. You run into that. But 3 days, so it's phenomenal. So we really back them up. But we can do that because it's one of those things where we don't get that many repairs. Usually if it comes in for a repair, it's because somebody dropped the lens or something along that line. You know that. So
yeah, and at that point, it's not covered under warranty. That's something that you have to pay for out of pocket.
But the nice part about it is, even though you might have to pay for it, we still have a 3-day guaranteed turnaround time. It's 3 business days from the day that they approve the estimate.
Wow.
So again, you don't have to be a professional photographer to get that expedited service. Canon and Nikon offer those services at an extra charge.
Yes. Yep.
Nikon professional services, Canon professional services. So we treat all of our customers as professionals. So then you look at the price point and you say, well, gee, our 7200 is $12.99. What's a Canon? Are they still about $18.99? Somewhere in that range?
Or north of that. Typically, I know those 70 to 200s are, $25.99, north of 2,500 sometimes.
Yeah,
So
I know Nikons are in that same range too. So
yeah.
So when you look at it and you say, okay, what does the budget allow? If I'm going to get the same image quality out of a Tamron as I'm going to get out of a Canon or Nikon, and there's that much difference in price, I always ask the next question that I ask people when they're looking at that, making that comparison. Now they know that we have a better warranty and great service and a great product. Is what else is missing in your bag? What else is on your dream list? Well, I probably would want the matching lens to go with that. You need something like a 24 to 70 2.8, and show them that, because maybe that's something else that will benefit them. Maybe they're doing a lot of portraiture and they want that and something wide and traveling. Maybe that's the walk around lens. I don't know, but finding something else that they need. And then when you look at that and you say, well, gee, for $12.99 for the 70 to 200 and $11.99 for the 24 to 70, you put those two prices together, guess what? You just got 2 for 1. You can buy those 2 lenses for it. Typically, you would pay for
170 to 200.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's great value. What we try to do is come up with the best value for the customer and then back it up with phenomenal service and phenomenal quality product.
Yeah, and that's really good. Real quick before we get to kind of our highlight for the evening, you guys recently, within the last couple years, you moved to the G2 series. Can you speak to that real quick? Like, what's the significance of the G2 series, and maybe, because I know that since the G2 series came out, with, that I've seen a lot of the newer lenses are kind of built around that same kind of body style.
Yeah.
And I would assume the same quality standards. I'm just wondering if you can kind of educate us quick on what the G2 series meant for Tamron and what that kind of means for us as a customer.
Sure. As the technology moves forward, the cameras can the resolution of the ability of the sensors gets that much better. And 12, you go from 12 to 24 megapixel to 50 megapixel cameras
Mm-hmm.
and above. And so you look at it, and people might have old film lenses sitting in their closet, and they're trying to use those. And yeah, some of them will work, but they're not getting the resolution that the camera has the ability to give them, because those are built for film, not for digital. So
Exactly.
Tamron had to do the same thing with their lineup. Um, they were great for some of the beginning digital cameras, but as the cameras, we knew that there was these 50 megapixel and more cameras coming. So they said, okay, now's the time to redesign. So
Mm-hmm.
they redesign the lenses, come up with new elements that transmit the light even better, new coatings, special nano coatings and things that are used on these. They start using fluorine coating on majority of the better lenses now, which is something that you could used to only find on some of the Canon L series lenses and those types of things. Tamron's putting that on there now. Uh, and then making the autofocus systems work that much better. The stabilization systems work that much better. So, like, for example, Tamron was the first company that, in our 70 to 200 2.8 G2, when that came out, they were the first company to come up with a lens that had the ability of doing 5 stops of stabilization in a lens.
Wow.
And for those of people that don't stop and think about that, you and I know what that means, but not everybody does. That's like gaining 5 shutter speeds.
Yeah.
Okay? So I can shoot handheld 5 shutter speeds lower than I normally would be able to. So if you look at, if it normally would take 1,000th of a second to be able to shoot that image, to stop to be able to hand hold an image,
Mm-hmm.
then you start looking at, you go half it 5 times, so 500, 250, 125, 60, 30, a 30th of a second. And when you start getting down into the lower range, if you start at 100 and you start getting down there at 50, 25, 12, 6, a third of a second.
Yeah.
So to be able to hand hold in with those types of lenses is phenomenal. Obviously, you still got to be aware of what action is moving in front of you, but to be able to hand hold in low light situations, you could never do it before. So 5 stops, that's in our 24 to 70 and our 70 to 200. Those are upgrades that were made to those lenses. And the focusing is faster, it's more accurate, better edge-to-edge sharpness. So a lot of improvements and everything. It used to be that the SP designation that was put on lens was superior performance, and that had a gold band around the lens. So if you look at the older generation, they had the gold band and they say SP on it. The SP designation is still there on the G2 series, but what they've done is gone to a silver band that's around the bottom. You can kind of see it on the bottom of this lens. It's actually a little bit wider than this. The thin, narrow one is not SP, but a wider one is the SP designation on. So you'll see all the newer lenses have that silver ring around the bottom.
Okay. Yeah, that's really great information. I appreciate that answer. And to speak to what you're talking about with that 5 stops of image stabilization, when you were saying being mindful, I mean, typically, what you're shooting would be, you wouldn't be able to catch it because it would be going faster than what your shutter speed would be able to stabilize you against in some cases.
Yeah.
But that is good when it comes to, things like maybe shooting landscapes handheld or something.
Right.
If you're in a pinch, you can do it. But if you're shooting something of action, then you're going to have to, yes, it's nice to have that image stabilization, but you're going to have to increase your ISO to make sure that you're getting your shutter speed to freeze your subject. So this kind of leads me, and I've got a question I'll bring up after we're breaking into this, but you had mentioned earlier, about the innovation that in the partnership between Sony and Tamron. But something what within the last is it 2 years that this has happened, or a year and a half? I'm trying to remember what the timeline is. I forgot when like the 28 to 75 came out.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years now.
But but Tamron has kind of, really taken this, this designing, again, you mentioned the size of mirrorless. Well, the whole point of going mirrorless was to shrink down the footprint that anyone had to carry around as a photographer. And, we talked about some other competitors, just kind of taking their existing lenses and adapting it to the system, which works, but that doesn't really solve the problem of, like, hey, this was meant to be on a DSLR. Why aren't we doing something to put this on a mirrorless? So tell us what has Tamron done to really answer the call of really, making lenses that go hand in hand with the new mirrorless systems, and who their focus is going to be. Is it primarily going to be Sony? Is there anyone else that's on the horizon? What does that look like?
Well, for right now, it's Sony, and that shouldn't. Now that you have some history, that shouldn't surprise anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, it surprised a lot of people because they go like, "Well, Canon and Nikon," but I mean, really, where did Sony come from? The Sony, Canon, and Nikon were king for the longest time, and they keep changing positions over the years. But Sony, once they develop the A7 series, really took over a lot of that. And so it's a sorry about that.
No worries.
Obviously, Sony was making some phenomenal cameras and putting some very cool stuff into them, and really took over some of that market. So because that was expanding, I get questions all the time about, well, when is Tamron going to come out for something in Fuji mount or Olympus mount or all of these types of things, because there's customers that are very passionate about those systems, and they could do it, but again, it goes back to what's the market share worldwide for those, because Canon, Nikon, and Sony dominate the market worldwide. That's where they're going to. That's
where their focus is going to be.
Yeah, that's where they're going to stay. So the one that made the most sense, because of a couple of things, because Sony was growing so much, and because of their long-standing relationship with Sony, it really didn't surprise me at all that was the first one that they came out with in the mirrorless system. Yeah. But you have to remember that when the 28 to 75 2.8 was introduced in Sony, they already had 3 lenses in the lineup that were standard lenses, were the standard lenses. They had the 28 to 70 variable aperture lens, so it's kind of a kit lens. They had the 28 to 70 f4 lens. Nice, but not 2.8. And then they had the 24 to 70 G Master lens. Phenomenal lens at $2,000+
and big.
And big and heavy.
Yeah.
So Tamron saw an opportunity to say, look, we could make a 24 to 70 2.8 and go up against the G Master lens, and we know we could do it for less money. But the problem is, it's still going to be big.
Yep.
So what they decided to do instead was come up with a lens that really fit the camera. And you've had the lens, you've sold it. When you put that lens on the body and you hold it, it just feels good. I mean, it really fits in your hand nice, and
it's a good fit all around. I mean, I've got one right here. I'm going to pull this out of the box. I don't have my Sony with me. I've got one across the room I could go grab real quick, which I think I'm going to do. Be right back.
Sure.
You guys can listen to me as I walk, so it's not walking too far away from the microphone. That's on my head.
That would be hard to do.
Yeah. But when we look at just kind of the kit lens, I mean, that's the standard kit lens. And if I hold up, my hands, as far as it, that can kind of fit in the palm of my hands, and this was their 28 to 70, and we look at, I'll take the cap off of the back of this and the lens hood off so it doesn't look as big as and intimidating here. But that's your 28 to 75 versus the initial kit lens.
And the kit lens again is variable aperture, right?
Yeah, and that's only like an inch taller, and it's nearly the same width.
And the
And
weight
there's
isn't that much more either, is it?
no, I mean, and the other thing is too, didn't Tamron focus on, and that's now it's to my fingertips where it wasn't before. So, and you talk about how the size and fit, I think it's a great marriage between the two. And isn't it something that it's also weather sealed to some extent as well?
Yeah, yeah. That's part of the construction of all of these the lenses that are made in the Sony lineup. Is weather sealing is part of it. So there's a consistent theme when you start looking at these lenses. And the 28, as we said, the 2075 was the first
Mm-hmm.
one. And so that fit in the middle of it, and that the price point, 879 for that lens,
Mm-hmm.
it was just a winner all around. And it was actually for those customers of yours that had tried to get one for a while there. It was almost 2 years before so we're in our third year now, but it was almost 2 years before Tamron actually had those in the warehouse. Everything
From
that came in from Japan, every single time was already pre-sold to all the dealers. So
wow.
we could not catch up with back orders for 2 years. That's the first time in the 25 years of history of working with Tamron I've ever seen that happen. There's been times when demand was, 6 months, it was hard to get something, but 2 years, come on. We were sold just tonnage of those lenses. And it wasn't just based on the fact that we said it was good. You look
Mm-hmm.
at the reviews. Start looking at the reviews on this one. Everybody was saying it was good. And every time I walk into a store and put it on a camera and have a Justin try it out, they're going like, "Wow!" I mean, that was always the reaction. Wow!
Yeah.
It's fast, it's sharp, it's just. I mean, I had everybody putting it through their paces, and they couldn't believe how great this lens was. So again, it's an award-winning lens. Fit well in the lineup at a good price point. Backed it with the 6-year warranty. Things like the I mentioned before, the fluorine coatings, the weather sealing, being a native lens for the Sony system. It's just a winner all the way around. So
Yeah.
they took that idea and said, okay, we have a winning combination here.
Yep.
Now we need to expand the line.
And that's where and where did that lead us? Where I mean, because we've had several lenses since the inception of the 28 to 75. Can you kind of lead us through some of the lineup?
Yeah. So when you come out with a lens that's a all around, carry around lens and a great starting lens, then there's a lot of speculation. What's going to be next? How come you
Mm-hmm.
can't just do 10 lenses at once? Well, again, there's only so much capacity, and when you're running at full capacity and you can't keep up with one lens, you're not going to keep up with 4 or 5 lenses. So the requests we were getting were, I need something wider and I need something longer. So the next lens to come out was the 17 to 28 2.8. Now remember, both of these are straight 2.8.
Yep.
2.8, that's 28, 2.8, 75, 2.8, 17 to 28. They're all 2.8. So there's a lot of people that were shooting video and those types of things that were looking for something wider. So the requests were for wider, for longer, and then a lot of requests for prime. So that was kind of the concentration of where the research and development was going into. A lot of the R&D stuff was already done. It's now just figuring out the size, weight, everything working together to make it. They did the motors, it's just an RXT motor, very, very quiet motor, and all of those types of things that they were looking at putting in the next lens to come out. So 17 to 28 was the second lens.
Which I've got here, and I'm just real quick to just kind of show people that this is the 28 to 75, and this is the 17 to 28. So
Just
really,
smaller.
just a little bit smaller, and that's really almost the size of the kit lens that we had on the camera to begin with. And, you know, I shoot a lot of night sky stuff. I actually did test this out when we first got one, I think last year, when that first initial batch came out. I had an opportunity to try this. And, I mean, it was sharp. I mean, and I shoot at 20 millimeters. I have found that 14 millimeters is just too wide for me. It's just too wide for my taste. But that range of 17 to 28 is actually kind of a nice little sweet spot, you know, because it's a little wider than 20 millimeters, not quite to 14, but it still gets you out to 24 millimeters and just a little tighter, because some people still shoot landscapes at 35 millimeters. So it's just that nice breadth between that. So, and it's not too big. I mean, it's light and it's weather sealed, and that's what I like. Is, you know, Sony was talking about, hey, we've got this camera that has this dust proof, kind of weatherproof feature, and, you know, finally we've got lenses that match that and marry to that system very well, and they're all under $1,000.
Right. And then you look at that and you say, because that lens came out at $899, and then you look at, like I said, what was next. The other thing that was consistent about it is the filter size. The 2875 is only a 67 millimeter filter size. So
Yep.
the idea was to keep it small and lightweight. So you take that, and then when we came up to 1728, it's also 67 millimeters. So it started to see a very consistent theme. So, you know, from there we went to the primes. We, there were a lot of requests for primes. You know, the 17 to 28 days, but you know, I'm looking for something that's a straight prime. So instead of introducing them one at a time, we decided to introduce three at once. The interesting thing about it was you had three different focal lengths. You had a 20 millimeter, a 24 millimeter, and a 35 millimeter. And they're all built on the same barrel. They're all exactly the same barrel size. So the length is the same, the dimension is the same. And of course, what did we do with those? To keep the consistency, they're all 67 millimeter filter size. So now we have five. When you take those five lenses and again, small, lightweight, and all the same filter size. The unique thing about our 35 millimeter, our 35 and 24 and 20 is the fact that they're also macro lenses.
Wow.
They all are 1 to 2 macro. So, you know, for those people that like to have variety when they're shooting, the beauty is that you can shoot it as a wide angle, then you can turn around and take a picture of a flower or something, a butterfly or something like that, with a 1 to 2 macro ratio.
Get pretty close up. Yeah, that's nice. And the added benefit of having having one filter size is that means, like, yeah, I may have a protection filter for each lens, but now I only have to spend, you know, one time on a 67 polarizer or a neutral density, and it doesn't matter what lens I have mounted. I just unthread my polarizer or my neutral density filter, and I'm off to the next lens with it.
Exactly. And these lenses, the prime lenses, the other thing they wanted to do was make them affordable again when compared them to what some of the other options out there were. These are $349 each. I mean, the fact that you can get a prime lens of that quality for $349 is amazing.
Yeah, and that's under $500. That's great. You know, to be able to, you know, $350. I mean, you can buy a 66-inch television for that or something like that. I mean, or you can buy, you know, a nice prime lens to do some portrait work.
Right.
So, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so then what was missing from the lineup? Well,
the long lens.
Yeah, the long lens. So a long-awaited, and everybody was speculating about what it would be. And as I said earlier, everybody needs a 70 to 200 2.8. So everybody figured that Tamron's going to come up with a 70 to 200 2.8 for the Sony E mount system. Well, surprise, surprise, they didn't.
Yep.
But there's a reason for it. we introduced a 70 to 180 2.8 instead. And
which
people
is
are going like scratching their heads. Why 70 to 180? Well, again, you look at the size and the weight. We could have easily made it to 200.
mm-hmm.
Remember, there's only a 10% difference between the two, the 180 and the 200. It sounds, when you think of 200 and you think of 180, it sounds like 200 is a lot longer. No, it's only 10% difference. But the difference it made in the size of the lens, the difference in the size and the cost of the lens. And again, going into Tamron's marketing strategy overall, they said, you know what? I think this will do much better as a 180 because we're going to keep the 67 millimeter filter size.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the lens, and the 180 is only what, an inch longer than the 2875, and it's
um
the same
yeah,
diameter.
I
I
mean
mean,
it's a little wide. The diameter's a little wider, but at least the lens diameter is the same. You know, that
yeah,
outer
the
element.
diameter is exactly the same.
Yeah,
But,
and it's just another inch. Yeah, it's like another inch in height.
and so, you know, you already had that good feel and nice lightweight 2075. Now you've got a 70 or 180 to complement it. Oh, it's a beautiful lens. And again, the reviews are coming out on it, and everybody loves that lens. And we struggle to keep up with demand on that at this
Mm-hmm.
point in time. It was obviously it was introduced during the time of when we're going through this COVID problem.
Oh yeah.
So we don't really know what we could have done because a lot of people still haven't gotten out and started shooting and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
we're still selling everything we can get our hands on. They're still on allocation, so it's been difficult to get. But on the other hand, it hasn't reached the demand of where we would have expected because there aren't as many people out shooting. But it is
Yeah.
a phenomenal lens, been very well reviewed. Another lens that's won awards already, and a nice compliment to the 2875.
And that kind of leads me to my next question because that's kind of the lineup as it exists now. We have those 328 primes, and we've got these. I call them kind of the holy trifecta because you've got, or the holy trinity, because we've got these three fast glass wide angle to portrait and portrait to telephoto lenses. What's in the future for this series? Is this lineup done? Is there more expansion to be had? What do we know so far?
But what do we know so far is the fact that we just in the last week introduced the latest lens into the lineup. Because the other thing that's missing, and what a lot of people that are Tamron followers know, that one of the things that Tamron's always been really good at and really pioneered was all-in-one lenses.
Mm-hmm.
The lens, I remember, and again, going back to early days when there were all these different companies around and everybody was trying to build an all-in-one lens, whether it was a 35 to 150, that at one time was considered an all-in-one lens. But Tamron decided that they wanted to come out with like 28 to 200. This is going back 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided that they wanted to do that. Well, the first one was kind of big, and you needed if you wanted to get close, it would only focus to 7 feet.
Wow.
But the thing was that it was nobody else had anything that was like that. So you had a
Yeah.
close-up filter you would screw into the end of it, and that allowed you to get closer. So we look back on it now and we kind of snicker, but it was the beginning of something really special.
Sure.
Tamron took that and they started developing all these technologies we talked about earlier and making it
Yep.
smaller, smaller, lighter, lighter. And every time they did that, the quality of the images kept getting better and better and better.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people initially thought 28 to 200 or any all-in-one, no good. It can't give you good quality pictures. There's no way. Well, again, the cameras, the lens elements, the coatings, all the new technologies, the lenses today are phenomenal. So you went from 28 to 200. Then when we came out with crop sensor cameras, we needed something wider. So we went to 18. So you had an 18 to 200. then an 18 to 250, then an 18 to 270, and then an 18 to 300, which we thought, well, how far can you go? Well, then a couple of years after that, you have an 18 to 400, which is where we are now in Canon and Nikon. But again, those are crop sensitive. Everything we've been talking about here in the Sony lineup is all full frame, right? So it didn't surprise me when the next lens that they came out with was an all-in-one lens. Now we just introduced the 28 to 200, and for the first time ever, an all-in-one lens that starts at 2.8. So now look at the lineup. Everything in the line, now you have 7 lenses in the lineup. Every one of the lenses is 67 millimeter filter size, and every one of them is a 2.8 lens.
So we got a 28 to 200 2.8.
But it's variable.
It's variable.
It
starts at 2.8. Okay.
Right. Everything else was 3.5 or 3.8 to 6.3, something along that line. So this is the first all-in-one lens that starts at 2.8. So
and
never been done before.
And at 200 millimeters, what are we at? 4 or 5.6? What are we? 5.6. Okay.
So again, it's faster even at the 200 because they typically were 6.3. When you look at all those transitions, when I talked about the 18 to 200 and 250 and everything, one of the things that was really interesting to me is you look back on all those, the aperture never changed. It always, in every new lens, it always was the same aperture. You always had that 3.8 to 5.6 in all of those lenses. And so, but the size of the lens changed a lot. You know, they made them smaller depending on the technology. But now the fact that we have a 2.8 to 5.6, it's faster all the way through than any other version has been. And again, most of those all-in-ones took 72 millimeters, sometimes 77 millimeter filter size. This one, small, 67 millimeter. And you look at the lineup, and I don't think you might not have one there, but I have one here, and I do have it to compare. Like this is the 28 to 200, and here it is up against the 70 to 180. We already saw.
Can you hold them up just a little bit more? Yeah, that's not too much bigger. I mean, it's like this 1-inch incremental thing throughout the lineup.
Yeah, it's about the size of the 28 to 75 when you look at it. It really is about the same size. So that's the latest from Tamron, and those are. We will ship these. They're going to be available in store on June 25th.
Okay.
But dealers are taking orders now. So if you have customers of yours that would like to order one, they should contact you and get one on order, because we will start delivering them to customers on the 25th of this month.
And what's the price point on that, Steve?
$729.
Yeah, so for $729, so under 750 bucks, which I think the 24 to 240 that Sony has, I think is $1049.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a significant savings. You know, for
what else are you going to get that's going to give you the flexibility of that at that price point?
Well, and it's kind of nice to be able to. We said 24, right? It wasn't 28. It was 24.
It's 28.
28. Okay. So for someone who's shooting astro, you can still you're still getting astro at 28 millimeters. At the 2.8. You don't have to sacrifice the telephoto for that. So it's kind of nice to be able to do that and not have to worry about that 3.5, because that increases your ISO a little bit. So it's a nice thing to have. Now, I did have a comment here, or a question, which kind of I wanted to get up to this point. So if you guys are interested in this lens, we are taking pre-orders for that. We are going to have those here in the store. So if you are a Sony shooter and you're watching this, and you want an all-in-one lens, 28 to 200, 2.8 to 5.6 is going to be $729. So that's all we need on deposit. But Joey Schumacher asked, can we get an inexpensive Sony FE mount 50-1.8 or 85-1.8? So with these new things coming out, is there, and he's kind of making this suggestion, since that's what you do when you come in the stores, you listen to what people are doing, asking for. Is there anything on Tamron's maybe roadmap potentially that we could be seeing some faster primes from them that maybe deviate from this 67 aspect to kind of fit the niche of faster primes?
It's an excellent question, and it's honestly a question that I don't have an answer for.
And that's fine.
Uh,
It's always nice to ask though, right? You never get any answers if you don't ask any questions.
no, and the problem is, even if I knew, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
But I'm very honestly telling you that I, everything that we know in the on the sales side of thing, on the technical side of thing, everything that they've shared up to this point has been introduced. The only thing that we didn't have that we knew a couple of weeks before it was introduced was the 28 to 200. Now, with that being said, when we have meetings, and we have meetings with corporate a couple of times a year where we sit down and talk about a lot of different things, including new lenses, and they do ask us for these kind of input. What are you hearing from the field as far as what are customers looking for? So if we go back and we tell them, it's just like when we were asking about the long lens. The other lenses that people have said that they wanted. We talk about the primes just like was just asked.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's an 85 prime that's fast, whether it's a 1.8 or 1.4 or something like that.
Yeah.
We have a 35 1.4 in our lineup for Canon and Nikon, and it's a beautiful lens. It's actually the best 35 1.4 in the world. Okay. You don't have to believe me. You can look at the reviews and look at the MTF charts if you're into all that kind of stuff. It's a phenomenal lens. And Tamron did that just to kind of prove a point of they can do
because we can.
Yeah, they did it because they could. It was the 40th anniversary of SP, and the competition had a 35 1.4 on the market for a long time before we ever came out with ours, and it was a great lens and did a phenomenal job. But Tamron knew that they could build one better that was sharp from edge to edge, even at 1.4. Yeah. And they set out to prove it, and they did with that lens. And that's what everybody, again, it's been tested and everything. So they have the ability to do these things. It's just a question of, will they do it? Mm-hmm. So when we go back and we say, hey, we have demand for an 85 1.4 or 85 1.8 or whatever we come up with in Sony E mount, they'll listen. I mean, they take the feedback, but it doesn't mean they're going to do it. They're going to look at the lineup just like I explained earlier, and they're going to say, what's missing in the lineup now? Mm-hmm. And when you look at the lineup, there are, again, it depends on what their strategy is going forward. As we've said, we have 7 lenses in the lineup that are all start at 2.8, and they're all 67 millimeter, and all very similar types of features and weather sealing and fluorine coating and all those types of things. Are they going to deviate from that, or are they going to keep it a similar theme? Mm-hmm. Because when you look at the lineup, what else do we need? You have customers asking for faster primes, okay? But what else could they add that they could keep some of the things? How about a macro lens? Could they add that? That's a possibility. We have a 1 to 2, but how about a 1 to 1 macro? Because in our regular lineup, we have our 90 millimeter 1 to 1 macro, which is full frame, and a lot of people are using it for portraiture and and for macro photography. So maybe a macro. What about something longer? The 200 or the 180 is great, but 180 to what? We have a 150 to 600 in our regular lineup. We need something longer. Sony's got their 200 to 600 in the lineup. Yep. Okay, there should be something as an alternative to that. Those are kind of, when you look at our regular lineup and you look at this lineup and you say, what's missing from this lineup that we have in our regular lineup? And so I could see something something like that. But this is all speculation on my part. I
Oh,
have
of course, of course.
And so I think that the odds say that we might see something more common to what is in the other lineup of for Canon and Nikon, what is kind of fits in with what we've already done there before we see something unique, or a little bit off from the theme that they're going for. But again, it's all speculation on my part.
Great. I mean, well, hey, that kind of answers it for me. I've had a ticker, haven't anyone ask any questions. That was kind of the only one is if we're going to have that outside of mine. So I guess is there anything else that you could add, Steve, before we sign off? Anything from Tamron or anything that we should know about? Any
No,
words of wisdom?
yeah, the other question that comes up quite often when I'm in the stores is people ask a lot, especially after we've gone through this explanation of them doing all these lenses for other companies and all the things that they can do and have the ability to do. The question that comes up is how about R mount or how about Z mount lenses?
Mm-hmm.
Native R mount or native Z mount lenses. So we know that right now, like with the R system, you can take our existing lineup of Canon lenses and use the Canon adapter, and they work really, really well
Mm-hmm.
with that system. And then the same thing is true with the Nikon, not as many lenses, but almost the current lineup. There's a couple of exceptions of ones they're working on right now. So we do have adapters, but people always want to know about native. And the honest answer, I'm bringing this up just because people will ask.
It makes sense.
Yeah, the honest answer is I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I again, speculation is that at some point in time, the demand is to the point where it would make sense. But right now, the only thing, like when we get told about new lenses, what we are told is basically there's going to be 1, 2, 3 new lenses in the next 6 months or the next year or whatever. That's all we know.
Yeah,
We
it's
don't
kind of
know
like this loose. It's this loose roadmap of just kind of like, hey, there's some stuff coming, but we can't tell you what it is. But just tell people we got stuff coming. That's as much as you can pacify them with, and then you get the burden that I'm sure, I mean, you get from me that you're going to get from all your customers. It's like, well, Steve, what is it? Can you tell us? Can you give me a little bit of a hint? I'll give you $50. I mean, I'll buy you dinner. What's it going to be? And I mean, you could say, well, if you buy me dinner, I'll tell you after dinner. And then you just say like, well, I don't know, because it really. Well, I'm just saying, you can take that one to the house and let me know if it works.
All right. Well, next time I come see you, we'll go out to lunch.
But I wanted to throw in there. Joey was still watching because he asked that question earlier. He just says, "Hey, thank you, Steve, for answering, and Justin for asking. Keep up the great work." And Joey, we just want to say thank you for tuning in and joining us, and keeping your eyes and radar on Tamron lenses. Because hey, you guys are doing a fantastic job. I'm very excited about the lineup. It's something that you and I have talked on many occasions. We hadn't carried a lot of Tamron up to this point, and with Sony doing so well and kind of breaching the full frame market like they have for cameras, this is something that we will be expanding out, and and that will, because of it, we're actually adding to our inventory, and I think that it's something where that spillover will happen from E mount to like the 18 to 400 is very compelling. Like we talked about earlier, and I think that just so to hear from us, I think you're going to see our business with Tamron growing as the time continues to move on here. So
sounds good. Just make sure that you keep on a regular basis whenever the new lenses come out. It's very important to keep ordering. You don't have to order tons of them at a time.
Yes.
But just keep ordering them on a regular basis and make sure you get 28 to 200s in that mix.
Yeah, and I actually need to do that because I've got, we got that 20 millimeter 2.8 in right away because that was one of the popular one of the 3 primes, and I got it the day I received it. It walked out the door. I mean, the guy said, "Hey, I just went online. I saw this in your inventory. Is it available for sale?" Like, yeah, it is. And he was here an hour later and it was gone. So I need to get that on top of getting some of those 28 to 200. So you'll be seeing that here soon.
All right.
Hey, Steve. Again, I want to thank you for giving us an hour of your time this evening, and just answering some of these great questions and just letting everyone know a little bit more about Tamron out there.
All right. Sounds good.
Hey, have a good one, guys.
Take care.
Yeah, you too.